Hey. What's up? Glad you're still here. So I'm gonna talk about virtual reality and things which people should use and like best practices people used to make virtual reality experiences last years. A bit about myself. I'm Vladimir, and I'm a creative director from Berlin. I do like VR and AR, video games, computer graphics, visual effects, and also like I run creative VR meetup in Berlin, trying to connect people who do art and virtual reality developers. Okay, let me start with this slide. Why people do virtual reality? So, well, I believe that the mankind reached this point when the technologies allows us to do that. I mean, and it's just recent years. And the interesting thing, what people do with virtual reality, and like what's the difference between virtual reality and mediums before. So I tried a lot of things last couple years, and most interesting experiences I saw mostly represent people's dreams and subconsciousness. And I believe that virtual reality is the technology which allows us to step in someone's dream, or like it's like first moment in history when we actually can create and replicate dreams and fantasies and let other people step into them. So there are a lot of experiences which are like based on kind of drug-like visuals, and there are a lot of also like sexual games and all this kind of stuff which kind of comes directly from subconsciousness. And what are VR specific kind of like techniques, and what is special about the medium? We are not there yet when you can just plug a wire to your brain and just like go to the like whatever fantasy world, but we're pretty close. Like, and why we're close is because, because industry developed a lot of hardware, like to fake our senses. We have a bunch of like headsets which like kind of help us to emulate vision, and like they're like headsets with positional tracking which kind of let us believe that we'll walk in the space and like trick our brains that we like the people really believe that they walk in the space in the other world and in this fantasy world. And we have a lot of different controllers, like from different brands, like from Microsoft or HTC or like PlayStation, whatever. There are like experiences where you can have physical objects like weapons and like guns and like baseball bats and like whatever you can imagine replicated in virtual reality. And there are like devices coming, and like next generation of devices coming. Like there are like already like prototypes for like advanced haptic feedback, when you like can touch things in VR and like you feel them. There are like a bunch of different manufacturers making these gloves. There are like this weird things called dildonics, where you can have sex with like your partner on a distance, you know. There are like things like simulating smells, and there are like haptic full body suits. Like there's this Tesla suit. It's like you can wear like full body suit and like kind of experience something in what is in virtual reality on yourself. So let me talk about what is special about VR if you compare them to video games. When I started to do VR, first thing I realized that everything in VR is 3D. It's like all the content is 3D, like, and all the visual effects, like, and all the concepts should be like 3-dimensional. I did before a couple of indie games and like just point-and-click games and like some mobile games, and I made like some computer graphics for post-processing image effects. But what I realized with the virtual reality, everything, you should rethink everything in like third dimension, like basically everything, the whole gameplay, the whole like story, everything should be around you, because it's not just static like camera which just looks in one flat screen. It's like the objects around you, is like everything is really physical. And I think one of the most interesting and important things about virtual reality is like a stereoscopy. I don't know. Most of mobile headsets, they don't really have it, and if you have like a 360 video, it's just mostly like this single point of view bubble around you with like stretched texture. But if you're using better headsets like HTC Vive or Oculus, you have like image rendered for each of your eyes, and it tricks the brain, and like your brain believe that there is like a depth. When I was a kid, I remember I was always going to like places like forests and mountains, and were taking pictures, and I always felt like, wow, this is like sometimes like I felt like this is like a super cool like valley, or like it's like amazing like I don't know, like forests or like huge mountains, and I was fascinated. But when I was taking picture and was looking at it at home, I never could get like why I don't feel the same. And finally, when I was making VR, I realized that the sense of depth is something what is missing. I remember one of the first experiences I played in virtual reality was Destinations or something. So they recreated desert on Mars, I guess. They made the photogrammetry of so like I don't know, some space thing was flying around Mars and took a bunch of photos, and they recreated the whole desert. So you can go to VR and be in like a desert on Mars, and you really feel that it's like really huge. It's not really the same feeling if you would see it on the screen. And I think people like who create games, they really should use depth, and because it's like a really powerful tool. Like you can create portals, for example, which like which is like one of the most interesting things about virtual reality. Like you can create a portal and like walk through it, and funny enough, it always feels like supernatural, like it's like a part of our lives. I mean, I know for me. You can create, for example, holographic textures and like materials which just don't even exist in real life, but just because you have stereoscopic headset, you can create kind of image for each of your eyes. And you can make like a cloth, which is like a portal to the other dimension, and your like brain will recalculate the depth, so you can look inside of you, and you can see like other world, which is you cannot do in a screen. It's like, for me, it's something like really fascinating, like that, like stereoscopic screen allows us to do. You can, for example, create this mathematic simulations like fractals, and just go inside there, and like you feel that you're there because it's like all has a depth. The most important thing and difference about virtual reality is physical interactions. So I believe that the whole history of arts, for example, starting from theater, then going to like books and cinema, you always had this gap between the art piece and the viewer. And for example, in cinema, like the most effective way how like creator of the content can affect the viewer was through emotional drama and like visual effects. And movies are really good at that. If you go to cinema, you always see like these blockbusters and like movies like super flashy, and they always like super like dramatic, and they're really good at that. They like about editing. They developed it like within 100 years. But in virtual reality, you have a like new dimension of telling stories and interaction with the world. So I think people should really create new ways of like creating experiences. You don't have this gap where, like in the cinema, you're sitting on a chair and looking at the screen. You just right in the middle of the experience. You can touch things around you. You can hear things, and you like sometimes can smell things, and like you have haptic feedback. So you're pretty much inside the experience, and this changes really a lot. And I believe the fact that you can use physical interaction is like really important. And I heard that even different part of the brain responsible for things you can touch within your like reach. So if you like, I don't know, touching something around you, it's just like it's new experience like for like players and viewers, because it didn't exist really before. Like I think people have to really reinvent a lot of things and discover it. Another thing is body interaction. So since when you're in virtual reality, you can see your body. That's something which we didn't really have in any other mediums. Even like, in video games, I guess pretty much the closest thing you can get, but it's not really the same. When you're playing with a keyboard and mouse, it's not the same when you actually have your hands and your body. And representation of your body is like really important. It like from different points of view, like from psychologically and like if you consider like sexuality, it's really a medium where you can be whoever you want. For example, a good example is there's like a subculture called like furries. Like there's like people wearing animal suits, like anyone. So and it's like everywhere, pretty much the States and like there and there. So in Berlin we have also like this convention once a year where like a lot of people just coming, and they were in like, I should put a slide next time, so there's like guys coming and they're wearing this animal suits, like really like furry, like foxes and wolves. They just hang out there like 5 days and having a like rave. And so there is like a small scene of virtual reality, like porn games. And so the interesting fact is that some guys made like a furry game where you can become like a fox or wolf or like dragon or like all weird sorts of like animals. And the funny thing is that it's the most successful game. Like the guys who are making it, it's like they running it on Patreon, and they getting the most money. And it's, for me, it's such interesting fact because that it's really based on this small niche where people can be who they want to be in virtual reality, so they can present their sexuality the way they want to like present it and like really experience it. And just the fact that some people built experience around that and it become the most successful thing, that's really interesting fact for me. And I think more people should explore this. Okay, the next thing is sound. Well, sound and virtual reality. So they're like, I made a workshop another day, and there are like a bunch of tools to do the sound. And I don't know why I put the slide actually here, but I just want to mention that the difference between sound in normal video game where you're playing with a mouse and keyboard versus sound in virtual reality is that it's like binaural sound. So you actually, in virtual reality, you need a technology when you're recalculating all the sound like in particular spots. So you actually, when you like turn around your head, the whole reverberation should be recalculated, and there are like a bunch of things already like exist. So it's interesting research, because if you do it properly, it really like tricks your brain and like really makes you believe that you are much more there. There was one experience I played called Life of Us, where it's like a multiplayer experience. You go together with another person, and you're completely isolated from the real world. You can only talk to each other through the microphone. But the voice you talk to each other, it's like, it's distorted. Sometimes you have like some really weird echo, or like it's pitched up, it's pitched down. So you're trying to communicate with other person with this like really strange voice of yours. You even don't hear yourself, you only hear like this modified voice of yours. And it's like, it's the most trippiest like experience I ever played. It's incredible how just sound affects you so much. It's much more than just any like crazy visuals. I think the sound is such a like a primal thing. People should really like build more experience around that. Okay, the other thing is I want to mention is emotional design. So there is this thing. I talked to a couple of virtual reality developers, and there is such a thing in virtual reality when you kind of combine a lot of techniques, like you do like a proper scene, you do proper sound, you do like proper interactions and everything. There is something more than that. Like you can create experiences which make you feel different. I remember I spoke with made a panel with this VR developer from San Francisco. Like last year I was like really inspired by his work. His name is Isaac Cohen. So he made a couple experiences where you like go under like this weird blanket thing. So it's like you're in this virtual reality, and above you have this like kind of weird glitter like blanket, and it gives you a feeling of like really intimacy, that you like a kid like with a flashlight under the blanket. And it's such an experience you cannot really have in virtual like in a video games. So it's something VR specific. Like it's only something you can experience in VR, like this very special moments. And I think the experiences I'm gonna build in the future, I really want to design them around these special experiences, like kind of more intimate. Well, diverse perception. This is a big topic. Well, I do arts for like all my life, and I did video games and interaction design before. And for me, I believe that when people consume art, let's say, when people playing video games and like go to a museum and interact with the installations and do virtual reality experiences, a huge part of it is each particular person perception, that we all perceive like experiences and world differently. And when you create something in particular, when you create art or video game or VR, most of the time you do it subconsciously, and you put just your subjective perspective on it. And in all interactive arts, you always have to consider other people's perspectives, and that's a really big point. For example, we built one experience with my colleague, like Anastasia, she will talk later, and we showed it around in the exhibitions, and we realized, for example, that how different people playing the experience differently. For example, teenagers, they just super active usually. They just like want to like I don't know, like go wild and like smash things around. Like kids usually, like who are really young, they just completely don't understand what's going on. They just like spaced out. And some people really need to I mean, adults, like sometimes some people really need like a puzzle to solve. They just like I can't just play around. I really need this thing to solve. Some are kind of like, oh wow, this is like cool thing. So, and the funny thing, when you're building something, you have to consider all these different things. So when a lot of different people playing the experience, they all satisfied and like they all finding what they like looking for. For example, there are like really small people, like there are like kids playing like this, and there are like guys like 2 meters tall playing. And one experience I made when you finishing the game, there's like a huge ball, like a fireball appearing above you, and we realized at first that it was okay, for example, for my size, but then when people were too small, they couldn't reach it, and when people who were like super tall, they were stuck in that thing. So this is like a good example of that. You have to always abstract from your subjective perception and try to adjust to make it more diverse. And okay, I don't know what's one thing also, like I guess Anastasia will talk more about this, but what is also like I really love to research is diverse like the difference between men and women perception on making arts. Once we went to this exhibition in Berlin, like feminist digital art, and I was like fascinated. There's like how like women make art differently. I don't want to. It's like really tight topic, so I don't want to generalize. But it's like for me, it's like I want to just understand. I really like the experiences I built afterwards. I always wanted to combine these 2 different perspectives. And funny enough, when we were showing around the experience, it's not just men who were like responding on the experience, but like women also were responding much more. Like the one experience we were building is like you in an embryo in your mother womb, and you like touching the membranes around you, which is like I personally would never come with. Like it's not, I can't relate to this, but like I really love to like explore this. And a lot of women were like responding to that. Although it's like if I would make experience and design everything, I would never like come up with something like this. So I think when you're making any virtual reality experiences or video games or anything, you really have to keep the diverse team. This is like super important to have like good balance of men, women, and also like young, older people in the team, that they all bringing their like perceptions to the project, and then more people will reflect on that and enjoy. Okay, let's go on. Okay, backgrounds. So this funny thing. So I played a lot of virtual reality experiences last year and this year, and I realized it was a super overhyped thing, like VR, and a lot of people were coming to VR. And what they did, most of the people, they were just bringing their background, what they did before, they just were bringing it to VR. For example, artists, they like who just used to draw with the hand, or they were like coming and using tilt brush and like just this 3D. Tilt brush is a tool where you can draw in virtual reality around you in like physical space. And there are like a bunch of different tools, like there are like sculpting tools and different drawing tools. And people who, for example, didn't have developer skills, they mostly start to create this thing called VR art, like art created with the VR tools, and there is now a huge scene of that. There are like movie guys, like filmmakers, and most of them who came to VR, they started to do 360 videos because for them it was just like a small shift in the whole like workflow. They could use the same techniques they did before. They could just film with the same cameras or like different cameras, whatever, but use the same software. And for them, like virtual reality was like, yeah, this is almost what we did before, but just 360. But honestly, it's not what VR is about. I mean, it's kind of, but like, it's not really, you're not really using all the features, and it's just like a small version. And then there is like video game, like indie video game guys, and like people who were making video games from like big companies. They came to VR and started to do like shooters and like this video game, like a VR experience with which based on classical game design schools. And sometimes it felt super weird, like a zombie shooters and stuff. I mean, it's fun, but like it's not only one thing you can do in VR. It's like really inherited from video games. There are like much more things you can do in VR. So I believe you should always balance between like use your knowledge, what you know, like what you had before, but you should really be open like to new things and explore and like be innovative and like keep the balance between those. But it's really important not to get stuck in the, like what you did before only. Okay, so this thing. So I believe virtual reality is really has influence from different small sciences, and like, for example, video game, computer graphics, psychology, user experience design, and interaction design. And for example, this also explains what I said before. The thing is, when, for example, I saw some experience when people just did video games and they do virtual reality experiences, and they have a really lack of user experience design, which was pretty big in like web development, and people already created a lot of ideas and concepts how to make experiences really good for end users. And for example, interaction design, which exactly explains all these diverse perspectives. And I guess it's really makes sense to at least kind of learn a bit the other parts if some of them, like if you miss some of them, because it really allows you to do better experiences. Okay, this I will skip. This, I don't know, should I say about this? I guess not that important. It's just the thing is, like, I personally did experiences and I was really fascinated by the 3D artist trends, which kind of exist in different 3D art world. There's like, there are like video games world, there's like 3D artists, and the experiences I was building like last years. I always want to bring the trends from like 3D artist world to the like VR. There are like a bunch of interesting artists you can check out. Like there is this. Okay, let me read this thing. This dude Android Jones, and he made a experience called Microdose VR. It's this kind of like Burning Man people who just taking drugs and going to virtual reality. There's this dude like William Lafan, whatever, like this guy. Yeah, this dude made this super trippy thing, like this experience, but unfortunately it's just like a closed exhibition in UK. I've never been there, but it looks amazing. But most, like, there is this guy, Isaac Cohen, I mentioned before, this dude, his like, other name is like Kabibo, and he, like most of the best experiences I played actually were from him. He studied physics and has a computer graphics background, like, and if you want to check out like some cool stuff, you definitely should check out for Kabibo. There is other dude, Sean Tan. It's just guy popped up out of nowhere from UK and made this liquid simulation, like liquid rainbow simulation. And this is something really funny. It's like the guy just made a simulation. You're just standing in a space and you have this liquids floating around you and just playing them. It's like physical experience. There is no real story behind, but it's super satisfying because everything you're touching is like just fluid and like rainbow, and it's amazing. But although it doesn't have any story, that's something really cool about VR. It's like really bring you new dimension of like experiences. There is this dude also, Michelangelo Rosario from Berlin. He's this really cool dude. Like he's not a developer, but like he did a lot of this VR art, which is really psychedelic, which is a good example of a person. He's like maybe almost like 50. He lived like in Ibiza and worked in as a stage designer and took a lot of drugs, you know. And then, so he's not a developer, but although he made so much, like so many experiences, and he is so like enthusiastic, and he just opened a space in Berlin and like, I don't know, like showing his stuff to a lot of people, like a lot of people coming, he's just exchanging the knowledge. It's incredible. Like for me, it's fascinating how like, he can create so much content without like not writing anything, because like I just have completely different like background. And there's this dude Sam Rolfs. He's not really kind of VR developer, but like he used a lot kind of VR influenced graphic design things. For me, just was really big reference. Okay, this we'll skip. Okay, my project's just super short. I made the fidget spinner VR and a bunch of other stuff like reptiloid synth, like where you like have 6 fingers and playing alien synth, and this one is like mush is like you on mushroom in VR, and this is Wump. The Anastasia will talk more about this. Yeah, can we play the video? I just will play then reel from last year. It's not everything, but just a bit. Okay, and the end. So yeah, thank you for listening.